we welcome everybody here in the room. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those that were with us yesterday. And again, we express our appreciation to Dr. Tony. Thank you for always answering when we call you. Then also today, we are looking at the theme of the week, community over commercialization. And one way or the other, it resonates with what AfLIA has been doing and what we hope to do in on higher grounds, so to speak. We are looking at building communities all over the library sector in Africa that we can grow their capacities in various in various areas. And this openness is as if it's what we have been doing over and over again. And today we are quite excited that the keynote presenter is from DataCite. Hopefully, we are working on it. We hope to have a partnership with them that will lead the African librarians into a deeper understanding of how do you get DOIs, how do you have communities that can help you maybe get them at a cheaper rate, make your data more discoverable. How do you store them, the metadata and stuff like that? Because we understand that we need to move in Africa from the bread and butter librarianship to a wider field where we'll have more relevance, or where our relevance will be more appreciated. And just staying behind our chairs and tables and shelves of books, no. We have to go beyond that. And so that is why we are exploring all this area. And like I said, we are happy that Bosun is here with us. We're also happy that Dr. Cobblah and Professor Bonyah are here with us to get into this matter and see how they can chart pathways for us to understand these new things. Not really new, but like areas we need to move into now. What happens to the research that people do? All these projects that are done at different levels, whether at bachelor's degrees and so on and so forth. What happens to all those materials? What can we do with them? What ideas do we have, of dealing with data from research and so on? Then how can we do such things as a community and not just look for how to get maybe software or something that everybody has to pay, but we do it as a community to make it cheaper for us. So that is why we are here today. And again, we appreciate everybody that is here. And please remember, on Friday, we are going to know who is who, because this is the open access week. We are going to know, do you really know what you think you know, or what you say you know? You can teach about open access, you can teach about everything open. Well, coming on Friday, and we see how you will fare in our quiz. So I want to hand over again to Doreen to introduce our panelists and our key discussants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc, for the brief welcome address. So today we have three powerful men to discuss this theme, community over commercialization. I keep asking people, which one do you prefer? Do you want knowledge to be a public good or for the privileged few? And I've heard a lot, but I really want to hear from the experts. So the first person on my list here is Professor Ebenezer Bonyah. He is a professor at the Department of Mathematics, Education, Accounting, AAMUSTED University of Skills Training and Entrepreneurial Development in Kumasi, Ghana here. He undertook his postdoctoral research fellowship program at the Vaal Technology University in South Africa in the Department of Mathematics in the year 2016 and obtained his PhD degree in applied mathematics from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Professor Bonyah is a reviewer of many international accredited journals across the world. and serves as an editorial board member of the 8 peer-reviewed journals. Prof, you are welcome. In fact, when I see or hear that somebody has gone to that level in mathematics, I salute this man. Prof, I salute you. You are welcome. And
Thank
then
you.
the next person is Mr. Bosun. Please permit me to just call you Bosun. I don't want to butcher your name. So Mr. Bosun Obileye is a DataCite regional engagement specialist for Africa, dedicated to advancing open science and research management across the continent. He supports African institutions by promoting DataCite's persistent identifiers, which enhances research accessibility and visibility. Bosun's work encompasses open access policy development, PID strategies, ontology, metadata schemas, and identity and access management, ensuring that librarians and research institutions meet global standards. Bosun has roles as a co-chair for I assist professional development, ISC2 exams development volunteer, and the former co-chair of FAO AgroVoc working group, and this reflects his commitment to fostering data sharing and knowledge dissemination. Mr. Bosun, you are welcome, and thank you for answering our call to this important week. The last but not the least is Dr. Mark Anthony Cobblah. He is not new in Ghana here and in Africa. He is actually the chairperson of the academic and consortia session in AfLIA, and he is a professional librarian and lecturer, author, and consultant with 24 years experience in research and academic environment. He holds a PhD in science, in information science, MBA in human resource management, MA in information studies, and Bachelor of Arts, history and archaeology, and a certificate in scientific information management. He is currently the university librarian for the University of Science and University of Cape Coast. I'm sorry to have changed your status. He is a university librarian for University of Cape Coast. Dr. Cobblah, you are all welcome to this morning's discussion.
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone that's joining this session. Let me first apologize. I just landed in another part of Africa earlier this morning, so I'm still trying to get the best illuminated location where I'm lodging. So please bear with my appearance on Zoom. And also allow me to share my screen so that you can be able to flow along with me. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I've been introduced and I'm glad working with us. As mentioned, I'm not just working for DataCite. I've actually been involved in establishment and institutionalization of open science for a major institution in Africa. The institution has presence in about 32 African countries, and my work there is still alive. So with that, I would like to share with us on the topic for the week, community over commercialization. Let's look at community and commercialization. I would like us to imagine a world where groundbreaking research remains locked behind paywalls. Imagine COVID locked behind paywalls and nobody can gain access to all these trials that are being run. Forget about COVID. Come to Africa. We consume maize in this continent. There was a time we will have, they call it fall army war, that swept across our continent. And most farmers, they were making serious losses. I remember that a lot of research organizations in Africa had to work hand in hand. How would they be able to share the research outputs on how to overcome this challenge if they are behind paywalls? Remember, we don't have that dollars, pounds, and euros as they do have in outside world. How are we going to be able to make something out of it? Inaccessibility to those who need it most. Those are the researchers in underfunded institutions, policymakers seeking solutions, or students eager to learn. This is the world we risk if we prioritize commercialization over community. In a world driven by profit and commodification, it is critical to prioritize community-centered approaches, especially in scholarly output, to foster innovation and equitable access to knowledge. How do we ensure that this will not be an annual talk show? This will not be an annual conference. We come around, we talk about it, and then we go back to our various institutions and nothing happened. How are we going to break the barriers? What do we need to do as a continent, as a country, as an institution, as government? What can we do to break these barriers? And that is what we need to look at. From an African perspective, I'm an African. So anytime I'm talking, I'm passionate about my continent. Scholarly outputs have long been a community effort. We all know that. Relying on collaboration and shared resources of researchers, institutions, and libraries. And that is why when you are publishing a paper, you don't publish as a single author. You want to look for other authors so that your work will have some level of trust and integrity. You also want your work to be reviewed so that it can be trusted that this is not just a gray work. Commercial interests often seek to limit access and monetize knowledge. They ask you to pay to access the database of XYZ. They ask you to pay before you can publish your paper. They ask you to pay before you can keep your data somewhere. They ask you to pay to even access it. While open access and community-driven models ensure knowledge is a public good. At DataCite, we offer essential tools that support community-driven research outputs. Yeah, somebody will say, now we are talking. How do you give us this thing free in Africa? This presentation explores how DataCite platforms and services strengthen the open access movement, and you'll see what we are working on. And I'm glad Dr. Nkem has given you some little insight into some massive work that is taking place. Dr. Helena is really working with Dr. Nkem, with the leadership of DataCite, to see what can we do for our region. We need to move beyond where we are. We want to break the barrier. So what is community over commercialization? Prioritizing shared access ensures that scholarly outputs remain accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford to pay. Empowering collaboration fosters a culture of sharing knowledge, resources, and data across borders and discipline. We want to ensure that we build a sustainable ecosystem which encourages institutions, researchers, and communities to work together for the collective benefit of society, advancing knowledge without commercial barriers. You know, commercial keeps on coming in, keeps on coming in. How do we break it? How do we break it? Open access is not just about journals, and we need to note this. Whatever we are talking about today is not talking only about our journals, but all types of research outputs, including open data. Remember, I mentioned the case of fall armyworm, which affected all our maize in the continent. If we did not find a solution to it collectively, collaboratively, and we are only focusing on journals, we may not get what we are looking at. So we need to make all the research outputs. As an archaeologist, what you find out, I may not be able to go there and see it. Can you take the image, share it with everybody, have a persistent identifier that keep on referencing you to be the one that discovered it, that excavated it, and maybe your literature or other people's literature, they can cite it. What about the thesis and dissertations? Somebody told me that the person finished in the institution some 20 years back, and the person went back to the same institution to look for the dissertation, a master student. And eventually when they found it, it has already started growing molds, getting worn out. That knowledge is decaying there. And it was a major work that person did for that dissertation. So how do we ensure that we make them open? The gray literatures, samples from your projects, instruments that you have used, for instance, survey instruments, artifacts, among others. There are so many of them. There is a great threat of commercialization. And we know that the paywall that I mentioned and proprietary journals limit access, as I mentioned, including both costs for sharing and costs for accessing it. The commercialization creates inequalities. And that is why they say that, oh, the rich countries can afford it, the poor country cannot afford it. It particularly affects the under-resourced institutions and regions. I can't shy away that anytime you hear in the news, West Africa, somebody said that West Africa is the capital. He said West and Central Africa is the capital of poverty. An African was saying it in a particular conference, and I was hungry. I don't want to hear that, but that is the truth that that person was saying at the conference. And when I look at it, do we really have the money in Central and Western Africa? We don't have it. And it's not just the two regions or sub-regions. The same thing goes to other regions too. We don't really have the money. So a foreseeable risk of knowledge becoming a privilege for the few is what we are trying to fight against. And that threat is imminent. It is true. What we need as Africans, we need to bridge the knowledge gap. Open access democratize knowledge, giving African researchers, educators, and students equal opportunity to access and contribute to global research. We need to empower our local institutions. We need to begin to allow our libraries and universities, our national institutions, art and galleries, to invest in local research and community initiatives. We need to begin to see how can we have our own Elsevier in Africa. How can we make our journals to be trusted? What do we need to do? What do we need to ensure that research outputs from our universities, they are local but global? Local in the sense that they are warehoused in your institutions, but they are trusted and accessible all over the world. What can we do to catalyze innovation and development? Freely accessible data and research outputs accelerate innovations across all sectors, from agriculture to healthcare, driving economic and social growth. For instance, we are hearing more about malaria vaccines. But do we know that it's not, we all know, malaria is prevalent in our region because we have the Plasmodium parasite in the mosquitoes that are in this community. The data that we have been collecting all these years, where have they been going to? We have great scientists in our universities, in Kenya, in Botswana, in South Africa, in Egypt, in Nigeria, in Ghana, mentioned African countries, that if they can get access to all this data, they can create something fantastic that will be made by African for African in Africa. Then we can get global visibility for all African research. Open access platforms supported by DataCite with our metadata enhance the discoverability and citation of African scholarly work, ensuring that local research has a global reach. Remember what I said? Created locally, but made available globally. We can do that. And that is what I feel as an African we need to project our nations, to project our regions, to project our institutions, to project our researchers, and to project every stakeholders for the world to see. And the value of community in scholarly outputs. A community that collaborates will endear innovation. When we come together as academic research, we thrive on shared resources and collaboration. And that is why a researcher, even if you are the best in this world, you need to have students. You may have postdocs working with you because you need to collaborate and you work with other researchers. Community effort enhance innovation and the speed of scientific progress. I mentioned the case of COVID-19, how the whole world had to work together. They created systems in which you can access information. Do we know that today we have some repositories meant for some of our food crops? Like we have what's called yam base, we have what is called cassava base, we have what is called musa base. Musa is for plantain, banana species. We have the one for the legumes. But where are they? Yes, some of them, I mean, working with DataCite to ensure that these are in Africa, but the whole world can access them. And that is what we need to do. Open Access Week is a celebration of making knowledge accessible for everyone, not just for we that are here, but for the whole world. Because once we make knowledge open, the whole world will benefit from what we are doing over here in Africa. It's a collective effort. And let's look at DataCite, a community-led approach. First, at DataCite, we are a global community. I want you to look at the word community. I did not say, I mean a company or a firm or an organization. I said we are a global community that share a common interest. And that is why when we want to partner with AfLIA, we are not coming as an organization. We are looking at a community connecting with another community to increase our global connections. And now what do? We share a common interest to ensure that research outputs, not just journals alone, not only books, not only book chapters, but all research outputs and resources are openly available and connected so that their reuse can advance knowledge across and between disciplines now and in the future. As a community, we make research more effective with metadata. If you have a repository and you are keeping your research outputs there, number one is that that repository needs to have internet, apart from all the security that you need to put on it. When you give it internet, it will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be able to access your research outputs. It will be it may still be useless without it having an identifier for each of those outputs in that repository. For instance, if I have OJS, it must be connected to the internet, but not just the internet. Each of the article must have its own landing page, as well as the journals. Then they must have metadata, which will give us information. But metadata now has levels, and that is where the complex comes in. That is what we have simplified at DataCite. The complexity is what we have broken down and made it openly available. The metadata connects research outputs and resources, going beyond just literatures, even to samples, to images, to data and preprints. So we are not just talking about just journals and books. We are moving and covering every aspect now. We enable the creation and management of persistent identifiers because we have different kind of identifiers. We have the one for human beings, we have the one for places and things, and we have the one for outputs that we create. So we integrate services with APIs to improve research workflows, facilitate the discovery and the reuse of research outputs and resources. So research outputs are so many. I just mentioned some of them. I try to categorize them here, and we identify and connect all of them. You can publish your outputs, including book chapters, conference papers, conference proceedings, data paper, data sets, dissertations, theses, journal articles, preprints, reports, text, book, journal. They are different. Event, collection, and all great literatures that you can think about. Multimedia today has DOI, persistent identifiers, whether it is audiovisual, image, interactive resource, or even sound. Your processes and workflows, like models that you create, you call something data management plan or output management plan, peer review, your standard workflows, physical resources like physical objects, instruments, artifacts, codes in your software, or computational notes and services. Just think about the research output that you are working on. It can be given DOI. Our community is broad. We have those that we call our members, because DataCite is a community. Just like AfLIA is a community of all persons connected to libraries by any way or other in Africa. You are dealing with information science, you are a potential member of AfLIA. The same thing with DataCite. Our members register DOIs and metadata of research outputs. So I use the word members. I did not say customers. I did not say clients. I mentioned members. Our members register DOIs and metadata. So you need to be a member to be able to have access to the full infrastructure, because it is more than just DOI. You'll be talking about the auth metrics that you use to look at the impact of your work. You gain full access to it, although some of them, they are also made open. But by the time you join us, you have more. You have access to our metadata for all research output and resources, including research organizations. All consortia in any form that relate with information science and libraries. They could be our members, government agencies, scholarly publishers, corporate research and development, every GLAM institution, that is galleries, libraries, archives, and museum. We have those that we call the integrators, and this one, they use our services to enable registrations, reuse, enrichment, and distribution of research output and resources. Some of them, they create tools like metrics platform. Some of them, they are harvesters. And some of them, they are just service providers. For instance, OJS, many of us, we know OJS. We have data, we have database, we have, DSpace, we have InVenue, Aerospace, and many more. All of them, they are part of our integrators. They use our backend to enhance their tools. We have the policymakers that are also part of our community. The policymakers, they mandate, implement, and or promote the use of persistent identifiers and metadata, including funding organizations, standard setting bodies, government, and all entities. We have the collaborators who we work with. They are our stakeholders, and they are all around the globe to promote the use of PIDs, persistent identifiers, including open scholarly infrastructure organization, standardization initiatives, and project partners. And ultimately, the people that actually churn out the outputs, who are the researchers. All our services are designed to support research lifecycle. And so we interact directly with researchers on new projects and initiatives. We support researchers through the services, platforms, and policies of our stakeholders. So DataCite contributes to the community, to the research ecosystem with our community-led infrastructure, partnerships, and initiatives. Our infrastructure will allow you to create DOIs. We have a system that we call Fabrica. This is where we create DOI. And that Fabrica, it will integrate DOI with your repository, with your local system. That's where you can do the integration. And then we have integrated workflow systems, a lot of APIs, a lot. We have link checkers. You will realize that some of what the tools you have been paying for, by the time you become a member of DataCite, eventually you may not pay for them again. Because the reports, you want to see the impact factors, you want to see the visibility of your institutions, of your work, of your researchers. You can drill down to each researcher, the entire institutions, or even if you make it up to faculty level, you can see it. We enable discovery. We have a platform called DataCite Commons, which index all DOIs, regardless of not even DataCite DOI, all DOIs. And you can view reports from there. We have the usage tracker. We also have metadata schema, which is made open. It is open. It links different metadata together, and that is the major work. Many metadata today, they are not linked. But this metadata, for instance, if you have DOI from another source, it can link it. It can link your ORCID. It can link your RAW. And it is domain agnostic, meaning that it can be used by the academia, by the museum, by national bodies, and many more. And also, it promotes reuse. You can specify your license types that you provide, as mentioned yesterday, and the citations are also embedded in it. So we have many strategic initiatives and partnership. It is in line with our vision and mission that we have all this. DataCite actively participates and leads various initiatives through collaboration with stakeholders in the community to make open science a reality. Let me start from the bottom, then I'll come up. If you want your report, yes.
Bosun, remember that you have just how many minutes? We'll give you just an extra 2.5 minutes, not even 3, Bosun, and then we can go into the panel discussion because there are quite a lot of questions for you already. But Dr. Cobblah and Professor Bonyah will look at what you've said so far and add their own views. Then we ask questions. So I just wanted to begin to wrap up so that we can break these things down because there are so many questions already. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I will hand it up. Our initiatives, the one that I want to tell you about now is the Global Access Fund. They call some of our African partners and organizations, they are still enjoying it. There's one for indigenous knowledge. And then this Global Access Fund, we had one for last year. Many organizations in Africa got different funding, 50,000 euros, 20,000 euros, 10,000 euros, some to build infrastructure in their institutions, some for outreaches. And we had one for, we call it a demonstration. EcoConnect got that one, 50,000 euros. And the one for 2024, which will be given for 2025, we've announced it. We just closed last week, but you'll be hearing about those that get the awards again in this continent soon. So this is a collective effort. I can't explain this again because this is where I will explain what each of us need to do at institutions as researchers, and then we can break the barrier of commercialization. So the real their data and all their research output, all of them, what they are doing in that institution across Africa has been made open. And Busitima University in Uganda, there's another institution. They just started this year and they have been doing fantastic work. All their works, they are made open. So I want to encourage you, take action now. The future is open. Join the movement. I can't just tell you more because time is not on my side. Thank you. So I'll be able to entertain more questions.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very much insightful, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions though, but I prefer that we go straight away into the discussions, then we can sum up all the questions. What do you think? I think that should be the best way. Otherwise, the questions will take up all the time.
We now hand over to Dr. Cobblah. Dr. Cobblah,
yes.
sir.
I really want to commend my colleague for this insightful presentation. I think he's really addressed the issues. I'm going to speak from the perspective of a librarian and my views on this in general. And I think that yes, in as much as we are looking at this issue of community of commercialization, we must understand that we belong to a whole value chain of different category of, if you like, professionals, and we have different interests. I'm looking at the value chain of the information management, beginning from the researchers. I'm looking at the role of the librarians, the role of the policymakers, the role of book and technology vendors, and if you like, and the like. So we need to engage all of us in this value chain. If we don't take time and we just take it out of context, and the issue is that let's create these communities of over commercialization. Do we still need commercialization of some research outputs, or we don't? That's the issue. Sometimes when you engage the publishers and some of the conferences that try to bring all of these people in this value chain together, addressing some of these concerns, are we engaged the publishers enough? You see that somehow they are all bought into the idea of open access. So a lot of them are now publishing in open access. And I'm happy. One of the publishers, for instance, ACM, is even going open access completely from next year. I don't know how far that has gone. Some of them are even stopping the commercialization and going open access completely. So that is my concern about that lack of engagement. To also know the position of the publishers and others who are in this industry is very important. That notwithstanding, I stand in for open access every day, because especially from where we come from, it is the way to go. But if some aspect of the commercialization will fit into the development or the growth of open access, then we need to engage. I'm saying this because can we begin to engage the commercial publishers to the extent that they will support open access publishing? That's one concern that I have. Because one thing that we have always not forgotten about open access is that somebody will still have to pay for the publication. Somebody will still have to pay for it in a way. It's just a matter of saying that pay for it and make it available free to all. That is the issue. So I strongly support the engagement that we need to have. Then I also support the idea of creating separate communities at the institutional, at the national, continental, and global levels. I think my colleague touched on that. We need to segregate the various interest groups in the value chain, because in as much as we have a common goal of ensuring universal free access to knowledge, we have different roles to play. The researcher role to play, of course, some of us will find ourselves in more than one of this, if you like, one of these constituents that I've been talking about. We have various roles to play. That is very important. And our interests, of course, we have a common interest, but in terms of the role, we have different roles. We should create different communities. And I think at some point, we may also have an integrated committee where issues that are of common interest to all of us can be discussed on such platforms. That's also very important. So I'm foreseeing the creation of librarians community on this issue, commercialization and open access, open science, if you like. And I'm foreseeing another community of researchers. These things don't exist in a formal and on a large scale, which is something we should be looking at. And I think this discussion should take a look at that. How do we formalize some of these communities? And how do we know the limit of the various constituents, and how do we, at which stage do we come together and have an integrated community that we can interact, so that we don't leave anybody behind in this discussion. We don't want to look like, because we are very anxious to commercialize, others' interests should not be considered again. As I said, I've made my point clear that I stand for open access every day, but I'm just trying to also look at the interests of others as much as possible. That's one point that I want to make. So we need to create these communities at various levels, and this community must not be isolated. They should be at the point where we should be able to come together and look at the concerns that we have. Now, we still have a lot of advocacy to do, because this whole thing we're talking about, in as much as we have been saying for some time now, there's still not enough awareness creation, or people still don't understand. I met a professor, someone was telling me about, I still don't get this idea of open science, open access. I still, can you organize a training for us? So we haven't done enough advocacy in this area. And I think that we all have to, the librarians and researchers and all of us, we have to look at this carefully and advocate and let people come to understand the importance of these ideas that my colleagues have brought up. I support everything said, but I think that this part of it that I'm talking about, this lack of engagement, this big are issues that we need to, and if we can engage and know that the money that is gotten from the benefit of open access, I think we can look at those models if there's the need. So I think for now, that would be my preliminary comment on this issue. And I don't know who will lead all these things. I just every day I'm happy about AfLIA coming to being, and I think they have been doing. We've been well. I don't myself to bring all these people for us to discuss these issues passionately. Yes. So communities must be created. Commercialization must be looked into because knowledge must be universal. Knowledge must be accessible to all. There shouldn't be any barrier in access to knowledge. I don't, either you are from developed country, wherever you come from, money should not be a barrier in accessing knowledge. I don't agree with that. But can we look at operational issues? Can we have a plan of how to phase out commercialization over a period of time? Can we make commercialization useful? Can we make commercialization benefit the researchers? One of the problems I have over this commercialization of issues is that even the people who write the papers don't benefit. It's just somebody somebody sitting somewhere who is even benefiting the more, which is very unfair. So how do we address all these issues that we have been talking about? And finally, maybe before my colleague comes, this is organizing African research output. So a big tax. The gap between the African research output that is visible and what is not visible is really, really problematic. And we need to address it. There's so much of our research output, and that has affected our contribution to the open access output. It has. And I don't know whether I want to blame the librarians. I want to blame the researchers. I don't know, because these days, if you want to put a research output in an institution repository, there are issues. So we're complaining. Big data, in terms of the research output, we have a lot to do. Because if we really want this to work, well, it's not enough to just say, let's not commercialize, let's open access. When open access means that the material, the research output must be freely available online. You can have any effective open access when the material is in print and is in your cupboard or is on your shelf. How do I share that? Even within our own institution, if something is still in print, how do we share? We cannot share what is available online. And you look at it, it's also an issue of funding, infrastructure. Some of us are willing to do more, but the infrastructure is also not there. You understand? So there are too many things that. So, moderator, this is my first take on the issue, on the topic and the discussion. I'll come back after my colleague, the other panelists come discuss. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cobblah. This is really insightful, and I really like where the conversation is going. Who will take the lead? How do we fund this? There must be outreach, but who is taking the lead? In fact, these are more important and pertinent issues we need to look at. We need the commercialization aspect because somebody must pay for the article to be free. However, how do we fund all that? Thank you, Doc. I'll now welcome Professor Bonyah to tell us his bits on the issues. Prof, please, you are welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much, moderator. I totally agree with Dr. Cobblah perspective. I am a producer of knowledge, and somebody uses the knowledge in a certain context. At the end of the day, because I don't have resources to pay. In other words, the institutions, especially in Africa, the article publication charges are not paid by these institutions. And then another day, I want my scholarly work to be visible in the global perspective. Therefore, I have to find money to pay this, and sometimes it's not open access. Sometimes, if I want open access to, I have to pay. In that cases, in some journal, you have to pay. And it's worrying because what do I gain? Apart from making my knowledge known to others, the commercial aspect of it, the money generated by the journal, I do not have access to the money. And that is worrying. And I'm happy that we are looking at community, knowledge base, and we may have a community knowledge engagement in different platforms, but still we can't also neglect, the global open access. And for me, I would have wished that whatever knowledge that is produced, be it in the form of article writing, thesis, data gathering, what have you, as said by the speaker, should be visible by everybody. When it comes to statistics and math, we see sometimes as an editor of a couple of journals, we are not sure what the person had produced in the graphical form. We normally want to see the raw data that produced the results. So if you have commercialization where there's no commercialization, we have open access to data, what have you. I could just log into a system, access the data that was used to produce a certain resource. And that for me is the issue. Right? In all of the conversation going on, one thing that still runs through, somebody must pay for the hosting of this infrastructure. The point is, who pay for it? Is our universities? Is it our regulatory body? Is it our various governmental bodies? And so on and so forth. That is what I also feel we should also not lose that fact. Because I will not spend sleepless nights and produce a very good article, and then we host an university repository, and that's the end of the journey of the work. I don't think that I will not spend sleepless night work with my postdoc or a doctoral student or a master's student to do something that I want it to be shared across the group, and then we cannot, because open access is the best. But the point is, who should, pay for such engagement for you to have the open access? That is the point that I think we need to look at it. And at the end of the day, I want to suggest that as a library associations, there should be an engagement, maybe if through African Union, AAU, or any other global platform that can help developing countries like us have opportunities to also, have our work being published in open access. I know, for example, Elsevier and many other publication bodies. If you are coming from a developing country classified by World Bank, every year it changes. Depends. Sometimes it give you 50%, depending where your country is classified. Sometimes it give you total 100%. And it appears almost all the open access journal I used to know, they are now turning to commercial. And it's worrying. Almost all open access I used to publish those days are now turning to a commercial basis and become difficult for us. For example, we published a paper about 2 years ago, and we were supposed to pay $2,500. And I work in an environment where my salary is not even $1,000. And how do I pay? And I wrote to them that I cannot pay. Up to now, they still be chasing me. I don't know when and how I'm going to pay such money to. So it's a difficult terrain. researchers in this space. So this is my initial remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. This issue is really is disturbing, is dicey, but we will still have to discuss it because who pays for the publication? It must be paid for. It must be published. We must have access to it. It should be open for students to have access because, excuse me to say, we are in Africa. Not all of us have the financial power to purchase articles or research outputs to feed them into our research. So what should we do? This is a big question for all of us in this room. Before we continue, let's go and take some questions, then we'll come back and then continue with the second round and maybe we'll round it up. I have seen a lot of questions here, and most of them not questions alone, but some of them are commendations. They are saying that thank you very much for this insightful presentations from all the three discussants. Thank you so much. You have given us food for thought and we will really think about it. So the first question is, how is DataCite a community? How is it a community? And there's another question that is asking about whether individuals can be members or register on this DataCite to be part of the community. So if Bosun, you can answer these two questions for us whilst we fish out for other questions in there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the question. I mean, apart from this question, I would have added some contributions on some of what my other colleagues have spoken about, but I'm sure in the course of our partnership that is coming up, we will be engaging ourselves on some of these things, and what we are thinking about to work with us will be shared with us in the series of events coming up soon in the future. But how is DataCite a community? DataCite is just like you are joining an association. That is the way we work. So it's like you want to join golf club. You cannot go and play anyhow on the golf club. So we don't sell DOI, buy and go. No. If we are doing selling of DOIs, it means that every of our tools will be selling it. We will sell the API to you. The systems that you'll be using for integration, we'll sell it to you. The system that you'll be using for your metrics, we'll be selling it to you. The indexing tool, we'll sell it to you. We don't do that. What we say is that we have membership structure. And many people in our region are concerned with that. And that is why we are into partnership with AfLIA, with some molders that will make the membership system very affordable, so that when you are in that system, the sustainability strategy will be easier to be able to continue that membership. So we are not a for-profit organization. We are not around to make profit, but we are around as a community in which when you join us, you meet with others, you have access to people and all the resources that are being developed, which are still continually improved upon. Our members are the ones that come around and talk about, oh, this is what we are looking at. Could that be something that could work towards it? Once you have joined us, you are not going to be making payment for that new innovation.
All right.
You are there and you continue to enjoy everything, the trainings, all the resources. Is more than DOI. We are only talking about DOI now. It's more than DOIs.
Can I come in here, Bosun? You know, you see, there are other questions there that, they are asking, can they be members as individuals?
Individuals,
That's
yes.
number one. Number two is, from what you have said now, or what you are saying now, is it possible that AfLIA members could come in as a block and then enjoy some services as a block at reduced fares? That's for DataCite. But I'm also looking at what Professor Bonyah said and what Dr. Cobblah said. You see, we need a plan. We need a concrete plan of, this is where we are now, to find out, where are we? Where do we hope to get to? And what are the possible, pathways? What's the roadmap to getting to the point that we feel that open access is now, acceptable, accessible, we know who is doing who, and we have the digital infrastructure, underneath to support whatever that we wish to do, because that is critical too. So I'm trying to marry it with what you have said, to know how can AfLIA come in, hold the hands of the African library sector, hold the hands of DataCite and other organizations, that you work with or that we need to work with, and join all our hands together. Because like you said, Dr. Cobblah said, Professor Bonyah said, we need to move forward. We need to be sure that we know even where we are heading to. So I just didn't want to ask this question of individual membership, but also to marry it with what Dr. Cobblah said and Prof said. Where are we? What's the road plan? And in fashioning out that, I remember that Dr. Bonyah said also, Dr. Cobblah said that we need more advocacy, more outreach, more engagement. So we want to know how will DataCite work with AfLIA to ensure that we get on the road, at least to where we want to get to. At least get on that road first. Let it now be that, it's still far, but let us be on that road properly. Thank you.
Doctor, since you have almost taken away the next contribution that I wanted to make, because that has been of interest to me. Because we wanted to make sure that when these discussions brings out the ideas that the AfLIA and the academic section can pick it up and work on them as a way forward. So I agree with you 100%. I was going to propose before my colleague came that, as we have always had in the past, AfLIA will have to take up the mantle, the responsibility, the lead responsibility on these issues. But AfLIA cannot work alone. It has to work with its partners and all the stakeholders. We need to define all the stakeholders one by one and know the role of each stakeholder. Some of them will only have to provide technical support. Some of them will just have to provide funding, but everybody has a role to play to enable us to achieve our main goal. And I am thinking that we should identify the various researchers group on the African continent and their interests. We should create platforms, community platforms for researchers. There are some international platforms that we all belong to. I know it's fine, it's good, but what is for us in Africa? What do we have for the Africa platform? Do we have some of these platforms just for Africa purposes? Then we begin to have the summit. I mean, of course, now because of the online, when we say summit, it's not too much of money. We can have an online summit, if they need be, of all stakeholders. We begin to have teams that can work on frameworks, models that we can follow. Then the most critical one, of course, is what have we got to give? What do we have to give as Africans, African researchers? Our research output on the global level is low. What are we doing about that? Because if we even come, well, yes, commercialization, open access, we are not contributing enough. We need a whole strategic plan for this. How do we get Africa research up? It's not that we are not researching. We are every day. The theses that are written at universities every day are enough research for anything. But the issue is that we are not visible. Our research is not visible. We need strategic approach to ensure that Africa research work are visible. That's fundamental to everything, because open access. When you don't have anything to give, and you always be receiving, and we are complaining now that even the Africa content is low in all these open access publications. But who are we blaming? Are we blaming ourselves? So I think the way forward is what I'm just thinking, that let's begin to look at this. Let's come up with a concept paper. Let's come up with some of this action plan, as you said, and let's follow to it letter by letter, and make sure that this will not become just another talk and it ends there. We need to really, really give our all to this effort. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Cobblah. One thing I can assure you, speaking from this side, from AfLIA's Secretariat perspective, is that it's not ending here. It's not ending here because we've seen that it's like trying to shoot in the dark, and there's no light, and you're not even sure what the target is. So yes, we will work on this action plan, get people involved so that we know at least this is where we want to get to, and this is the road to get to it. And then with our partner organizations, and hopefully others like DataCite that we hope that will soon be a partner, we can get on that road. We can get on that road to where we want to land at. So Bosun, please, we are looking at time too. Doreen, please know when we are going to stop. But somebody had raised his or her hand a long time ago. I don't know if that person is still there. Doreen, are you still here? Oh, Doreen, please go on. You raised your hand. Doreen, please go on. And then maybe we can also allow Bosun to answer some of the questions while we are waiting for Doreen to.
Hello, there are two hands raised here. I'm sorry, I wanted to just go and check who has raised their hand. So Olabisi Olatunji, you can unmute yourself and then ask your question, or better so you can post your question in the Q&A button session. We will check and then read it out for you. And then we have Martins Yinka. You can type your question in the Q&A and then we'll read it there.
Yeah, Doreen, I've allowed them to
Hello.
speak, so can speak.
Okay, sure. All right, thank you. Okay, so Olabisi, please, you can go ahead. Hello, Mr. Olabisi,
Hello.
you can go ahead. Yes, go ahead, please. Hello, we can hear you. Please go on. Hello.
If not,
we
let's
can
just
hear
hear
you.
from Yinka. Let's hear from Yinka.
Let's see the speaker again. Because I'm seeing error sign.
Hello, we can't hear you well. So otherwise, Yinka, please, you can go ahead and speak. Hello, Yinka. Please, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been
You're
enjoying the session since morning. Yeah,
it's a pleasure to have you here too.
My issue with open access in Africa, majorly from my own personal experience, I think it lies with some of our universities themselves. Most of them are not kind of embracing the idea of this open policy. Perhaps I would say there is no much effort the will to execute these things are not. They don't have the will to execute this thing. So I'm looking at, could the association, come up with, would I call it a policy or something that would mandate institution to take, open access seriously here in Africa? Because here currently in my own institution also, it's not because we don't have the infrastructure on ground, but then the will to go ahead and do these things is not there. It's not there. So I don't know if the association could work on policies that would mandate most libraries in Africa to, have a functional repository for scholarly output, to reside on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I take it as a contribution, right?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for your contribution. It's noted.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So, like Doc said, we need to think about who is taking the lead, and we need to strategize very well. On this, I'll call on Professor Bonyah to also give us his contribution on this. Who should take the lead? Prof, what do you think we can do as a continent? I think you are the one who mentioned that we can contact AU or AAU to develop something for the continent. What do you think the library, or let's say AfLIA, because we are the ones who convened this, together with Dr. Cobblah being the head of the academic session, what do you think we should do? How can we go about this? Maybe my question is not well organized, but how can we go about this to ensure that we are able as a continent to get some funding, maybe for researchers, for institutions, for everybody to be able to publish well?
Is Prof online?
Online. Prof
It's
online.
possible that it's possible that he, yeah,
So,
yeah.
Dr. Cobblah,
Let me say something, please.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Can I say something?
Dr. Nkem, please go ahead, please. Yes.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, yes, I'm going back to what Dr. Cobblah said. We need to think of how do we develop an action plan with stakeholders, all the stakeholders on board, and then seek the ratification of such a plan from universities and research institutes, so that there will be a plan to follow, in implementing open access, in ensuring that that the capacity of librarians and others are built in this area, in ensuring that, if possible, there are shared digital infrastructures that everybody can key into. And then from there, within that plan, then from there, once we get the ratification, this is not going to be a one-day thing, it's not going to be a one-year thing, but once we can get such a ratification or such a buy-in from our universities, then it will become easier to push for, let's say, trainings, for policies that support this, for how do I put it, for belonging to communities that can now bring out best practices and stuff like that. But first of all, it starts with an action plan, and it can be developed only by AfLIA, but by AfLIA and stakeholders in this in this region, within this region, and for this particular field of interest. Thank you. That's just what I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you very much.
My network, I'm here.
Oh,
I think there was a question. Yeah.
Yes. I think Dr. Nkem has partly answered your question. I was asking how best we, as now we are in Africa, how best we can reach out to AU. How do we go about it? Because with the AAU, their headquarters is in Ghana. So maybe researchers, we can have the stakeholders, a cross section of them, or maybe a delegate to form a committee and then reach out to AAU and see how best we can go. But for us to have it in the whole of Africa, then it means AU must come in. How best can we reach out to them? I mean, what do you think we can do?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question. However, it's also interesting to know that not even all universities are member of Africa University Association. And for me, that is something worrying. Everything we do in this part of it, we think about money. I know we have subscription fee, but it's about, I know it's around $2,000 to $3,000 per year. But this is a body that has been carved out of African Union, responsible for championing education. Now, if you look at some of the journals that we have around, may not be doing bad, no, but people will still want to push their scholarly work outside this place. Why? Because one, the person going to publish is looking at the database, is looking at the quarter. Is it K1? Is it Scopus? Is it Web of Science? And so on and so forth. So for me, if all universities will be encouraged to join this association, then they can have one map piece. They can put together a proposal. After all, they are spending money on security and others. You also need, if people get access to quality information, maybe research output on maybe conflicts, and so people may even decide not to involve themselves in conflict, diseases, and so on and so forth. So it's like, more or less, if you able to get a breakthrough where you're able to have a mouthpiece at African Union through maybe the AU, the African University Association, I'm sure you can get a breakthrough where they can decide that you're going to set up maybe a fund to help some African institution journals or some journals established in Africa to have the right infrastructure, to have the right caliber of people to manage these journals, so that as time goes on, they will have the opportunity to also break through. I always use the example Scientific African, which I'm a part of the editorial board. It's a Scopus K1 journal, and it has not been easy. If I look at the kind of sacrifice people have done to bring this journal up to this level, and if you look at the charges that they charge per manuscript, $500. The same quality, standard, everything in elsewhere, they are charging $2,500. So it means if you're able to put this thing very well, the cost of publishing in quality journals, commercializing, whatever it is, it can even bring them down if you host them in our own way, which can be supported by AU. So that is something maybe we can put together a team, or we can inform our vice chancellors when they go for a meeting, they can bring some of this thing up. And for me, it is doable. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Maybe moderator, let me just add something there to what Prof just said.
Okay.
And I like what Dr. Nkem was coming at. I think it has to be driven by some our political leaders as well. And I like when we make the point that this is about knowledge access. And I like what Prof was saying about what knowledge access can do, prevent diseases and all kinds of things, promote agriculture, promote energy conservation. If we bring it down to this level where our political leaders appreciate what research can do, what access to knowledge and information can do, then I'm sure having a conversation with AU, African Union, should not be difficult. Should not be difficult, because if the drive is from there. If we have their support, then of course it comes down to the AAU, Association of African Universities. But it goes beyond AAU, because in terms of the researchers, those who generate the knowledge, and those who organize and disseminate it, yes, most of us are under the AAU umbrella. Then it comes down to AfLIA as well as one of the implementers, because of their special role in promoting libraries and information management on the continent. So I am trying to now get from the conversation a clear picture as to what we need to do. But who takes the issue up?
The lead. That is the question.
Who goes there? And
Doc,
that's, yes.
Doc, a point. Let me ask this before I forget. From what you just said, should the approach be a bottom-up or a top-down approach? From AU down or from AAU up? Which one?
I think it can be a bottom-down approach. AfLIA and AAU have the leverage to approach AU. We do. We are recognized by so we have the leverage. So, but if you are going to meet such people on an issue, you need to put your house in order. You need to get a clear concept, a clear view.
Yes.
I mean, if you go there, how many minutes would they give you to present them? So we need to really get, and that brings out the issue of lobbying and negotiation. You see, and an area that we don't do well as Africans. We can lobby. I mean, we can lobby AAU, we can lobby AAU. And it's just going to be like ordinary things as usual. But if we get our idea, and I'm picking this from the presentation of Prof, the good Prof, about what knowledge can do. If we organize this way, that it's not just our access to information for teaching and learning. That is not our concern. I mean, for what we do for our teaching and learning, we can do it. But it's about how the research outputs are publicized enough for everybody to access. How our research output are not just reduced to publication in scientific journals and articles that we cannot even subscribe to, that no ordinary person cannot have access to. And it comes down to how do we then repackage some of this very complicated knowledge into a format that the ordinary fisherman in Ghana, the ordinary farmer in Ghana can also understand. The ordinary old lady in my village can understand. My mother can understand why she shouldn't do this and that, not to get a disease. How do we package? The packaging tool is not there. The knowledge sometimes is too technical, and it doesn't really benefit the majority. So we have a whole lot of issues to look at, not just getting it in a repository or getting it in a whatever, but this repackaging of the research scientific information tool is also a big issue that
very important.
Yes,
very important. It is a very important issue. Let me see if there is a question. Okay, so Bosun, there's a question here for you. What is encryption over open access? Kindly elaborate on the term encryption and how can we relate it to open access? Because I think the person after your presentation got
you have asked the question to the right person. First, the global body that is, I'm not supposed to, but I can say it because I'm not taking the exam. I'm one of the few people in the world that are certified to be a developer of exam for those that are in the cybersecurity, especially for IC2, which is the gold standard certification for cybersecurity. So I can talk, but I'm not giving you exam questions, so I can talk professionally.
Sure, no problem. Yeah. You can go ahead.
Now, what you talk about encryption, there is something they call CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The confidentiality, you want to make your data to be open or your work to be open. Remember, you make it as open as necessary. That's going to be another session. Your information that you want to make open, you want people to respect and give you credit. You want it not to be stolen away from you. There are some times that you have some work that you don't want the world to access immediately. But maybe in the future, you make it available to people. So the kind of protection that you give to your infrastructure and to your work using complex algorithm, they are mathematical algorithms that are written, and they are what they call crypto keys. They use it to protect that kind of infrastructure and the information. That protection that you provide to your infrastructure with that algorithm is what they call the encryption. I will need a whole session to explain more. Now, when we now talk about making your work open, when you make your work open, you still want people to still refer to you as being the author or the creator, to cite you, or to even give you some form of compensation or some monetary value for what you have done, maybe in one way or the other. That kind of protection that will ensure that your work still follows you, you get the credit, and perhaps there could be some monetary value that may come in or other benefits. That protection comes in through the encryption. That is the least way I can explain it at an introductory level. But it will take a whole day to actually have a session to drill down for us to understand it. And I'm open that part of the partnership that we are working with AfLIA, one of the sessions may need to also build things like this, up to the advocacy, the institutionalization, and some of what we have discussed here. We are also planning. Dr. Nkem, I mean, she is pretty much in the picture of what we discussed. So I hope that we may be able to engage our community. Remember, I'm an African.
Yes.
Blood of Africa is in me. So we'll be able to work together with that encryption that you also mentioned about. We'll drill into it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's a second question, and this one, I think you just answer it straight away. How can DataCite help in promoting indigenous knowledge? I know this one is from the expert in indigenous knowledge, Dr. Nwafo. Doc, your question has been asked, and I'm sure Bosun will do justice to it.
So we have several work that we are doing on indigenous knowledge. For instance, in Nigeria now, 50,000 euros was allotted to EcoConnect on indigenous knowledge promotion. 50,000 euros, and they should finish the money in 1 year. That is one aspect, direct funding. Number two, the IGSN that is used for, they call it the International Generic Serial Number, that is assigned for things related to indigenous knowledge, is under DataCite, and which our members can access. Their infrastructure itself, for instance, in Africa, we have the Africa Peace Alliance. They have to partner with us because we are also to give them some support. But that is even a section. It is coming at the African level from AfLIA that will actually give us the kind of support that we can do for them in terms of the library, I mean, the archaeologists. We have some indigenous knowledge that are related to some tribes, many tribes in our continent. So we are working with some of our members, especially in Africa now, on it. So it's our membership, which we are already working on with AfLIA, that will bring this more open. I've talked about the direct funding, which we are doing. In fact, this year, I don't know why some of us did not apply. They won't just close. So we are still working a lot with AfLIA, and you are going to see the direct impact of it.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. So this conversation cannot end today because there is more to talk about. This conversation has really piqued our interest, and AfLIA is not letting it lie. We will surely call back Dr. Cobblah and Prof. Bonyah, and then we will also call on Bosun and many others to the table for a proper and more detailed discussion so that we see how we take this conversation further, because it is important that we discuss this. It is important that there should be a continental wide policy for researchers to be able to publish in an open access journals and have knowledge become open for everybody. In fact, students like me who cannot afford to be buying articles 35 pounds, 20 pounds every time, we are at a loss. and we need to get this thing down with so that it will benefit everybody, not only for students, like Dr. Cobblah has been stressing, but for national and continental development. As part of both the SDGs and then AU 2063, we all know that there should be information should be open. It should be freely accessible. And so if information should be freely accessible, knowledge is part of the information that we need to input into whatever we are doing. And this conversation must continue. So, Doc, I'll give all the panelists 1 minute each, starting from Dr. Nkem. Dr. Nkem, you have 1 minute to tell us what you think about this. From there, we go to Dr. Cobblah, then Professor Bonyah. I don't know if Dr. Liliot is still here because he couldn't answer his question when we asked him. If he's around, he'll give us his bit. Then we run it up with Bosun. You just give us 1 minute and then we will call it a day. Okay, Dr. Nkem has said she doesn't have anything to say. So, Dr. Cobblah, can you please give us your 1 minute?
That's fine.
round?
So, I think this discussion has been very useful. I think
Yes.
at least we have a fair idea as to the way forward to ensure that we protect the research outputs of the African continent and also support the open access concept. I commit myself as a member or as a chair of the AfLIA academic libraries session that will work with AfLIA, our mother organization, and other stakeholders to ensure that we achieve our common goal. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cobblah. Please, Professor Bonyah, please, can you give us your last comment?
Okay, thank you. Yeah. In fact, this forum has been very useful in the sense that this is what researchers are going through in terms of difficulties making their work accessible to everyone. And you also know that if you publish in open access, because your work is accessible to everyone, you get more citations, your work become more influenced than, the one that are not open access. Yeah. So I will submit that this conversation should not end here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a committee could be formed looking at how the association and then African University Association can link up together. Then making a case at AAU or respective government bodies during their AU session should bring this matter up to ensure that something is done. Because my point is this: if we are able to disseminate knowledge, there are so many things going on in this continent that we can eliminate them. Diseases, hunger, and what have you. But because we are not doing that, I mean, that is what causing us a lot. That is what I think I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. The Bible version that says that lack of knowledge, my people perish, I am sure has really come to bear here because we need the knowledge. The political leaders need it. We need it for national development. We need it for poverty eradication. We need it for all the diseases, all these pandemics left, right, center here. We need knowledge to alleviate all these ones. And thank you so much for starting this conversation with us. We will not let it lie. We are going to take it up because we are very much interested in this conversation. Prof, thank you so much for your time and for your insightful contributions. So, Bosun, you are for us. Like my little girl will say, you are mine. You are for us. So tell us in 1 minute what your final comments will be. Then we move on from here.
Yeah, the final from me is not final, but just the beginning.
Yes.
This is the beginning of opening our region hub. Now I'm talking from two aspects. As an African, and as an African working with a community that is saddled to open up science and to open up our research. So, and I want to believe that we have started this process. We should see it through. I could see the partnership, the engagement, the training, the capacity building, the advocacy, and then some logistics that will be coming in. If we employ open arms, it will work. And I want to say something. I'm a man of like passion. Why is it? The challenges that we're encountering, I encountered it from policy formulation to advocacy, getting the technology right, and then how do we make funding to come in after implementing for a major institution in Africa? Until now, they still consult me, and I believe it can work across for AfLIA,
Sure.
every institution in our region, and we will come from the abyss to be at the top of the pyramid. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and everything. We are grateful for having you here. This has really been an insightful discussion and very fruitful one like that. We will not leave it lying down. For a few announcements, please. We are going to launch our program with Wikimedia again, God willing, on the 1st. I'm going to share the link in the chat box so everybody can go there and search, or you can still go to our AfLIA website. You see that we've already made the announcement there, so you can get there and then link up and register, because the conversation is going to be by regions. We are going to have virtual conversation by regions, and I tell you, don't leave this thing lying down, because what we are talking about now is open access. And over the years, we realized that Africans, or our contributions, or whatever we have, is not being made open, or is not being linked to our various libraries because of lack of authority controls that are linking our contributions to our various libraries. And so this and many other things we are going to look at. Kindly don't miss out on this. I've shared the link in there. You can go in and check, register for your time. We are catering for everybody, the French and then the English. We couldn't get much from the Portuguese speaking countries, but because they all speak French, the French will cater for them. So please go there, register, and let's join. Come 1st November, we are launching our new project with Wikimedia. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day.